Yeah, very briefly, because it is a broad concept. There are two different types, let's say, from what I've seen, there's two different types of people who respond to vitamin B1. The way that we are generally taught and is more of a conventional concept is that nutritional deficiencies occur because of a dietary lack. So they mainly occur in people who don't eat enough. That, like, as in they don't eat the right foods which contain those vitamins. And as you know, the RDA, or the recommended amount, is for many of the B vitamins. If you look at, for instance, vitamin B1, it's only 1 milligram to 1.5 milligrams. Now, it's really not that difficult to achieve that through the diet, but the general consensus, or the theory, is that if the only people who are going to be susceptible to a deficiency are the people who are not eating enough, or are, for whatever reason, consuming something which is known to deplete B1. So, for instance, alcoholics, in certain cases of gastric bypass surgery. There's other niche kind of instances where conventional doctors might suspect B1 deficiency. But I think the way in which the conventional kind of view looks at nutritional deficiency needs to radically shift, because it would seem as though there are a variety of different things which change the demand which someone has for different nutrients. And one of those, particularly B1, let's just say if someone is dealing with some kind of a chronic health issue, there's good reason to assume that their requirement for nutrients goes up across the board. And there is a lot of evidence to substantiate this. But there's also a concept which is really not touched on, but there is also a body of evidence for, is that what can happen at the cellular level sometimes is that there are certain processes which become blocked or inhibited or inactivated. And what ends up happening is that produces a situation which is basically equivalent to a deficiency. The thing is that the problem, or the original issue, which is causing a blockage on metabolism, it's not related to a nutritional deficiency. It's not related to the diet. So I'll give you an example. Is you've got one type of person who might be consuming a lot of alcohol. They might have the very traditional risk factors for B1 deficiency. They might have chronic gut issues, and they might just be on a very restricted diet because they're doing some SIBO protocol or something like that, and they are genuinely low. So for those people, they might just need to have an extra few milligrams every single day for a couple of weeks, and you would see that their symptoms will respond very quickly. On the other hand, we have people with quite severe neurological or neurodegenerative conditions, and this would kind of include people with, say, fibromyalgia, people with Parkinson's disease, people with multiple sclerosis, these supposedly incurable conditions. Well, these people don't necessarily have a nutritional deficiency, but they are people who many times, say 7 or 8 times out of 10, are responsive to very high doses of B1. And the reason for this is because if you look at the literature, it would seem as though the disease process itself can cause a let's say basically block or inactivate B1 dependent enzymes, so thiamine dependent enzymes inside the cell. And even eating a diet which is rich in B1 is not going to influence that in any way. The only way in which you could potentially resolve that situation is by using high doses. So you have a group of people who basically have like a functional deficiency at the cell level, which is completely unrelated to diet. And this is not going to show up on any tests, any functional tests. Regardless, you can have a localized or focal deficiencies in just one region of the brain. For instance, if you look at the evidence on Parkinson's disease, they've shown that within just the substantia nigra, which is the area which becomes dysfunctional in Parkinson's, there is this localized B1 deficiency because of this blockage on enzymes. And ultimately, there's nothing you're going to do from a nutritional standpoint that's going to address that, because simply giving a small amount every single day is not going to fix it. In fact, what you need to do is you apply a different concept, and this comes back to the concept of megadosing, which is it's related to how they treat disorders of metabolism. I'm not sure if your listeners are familiar with that, but basically you have people with, say, hereditary or genetic defects in their transport systems, or in basically the proteins which allow their cells to absorb vitamins. And so for those people, the only way in which an example would be genetic hyperhomocystinuria, for instance. So these people generate massive amounts of homocysteine, and the enzyme which requires vitamin B6, it's got a very low affinity for dietary B6, and so the amount that they get through the diet is just not enough. This enzyme becomes blocked up, and you end up with massive amounts of homocysteine coming out in the urine. The way that they treat this from a conventional medical standpoint is by giving mega doses of vitamin B6. And the concept is that when you give mega doses, you saturate the cells and you can kickstart those enzymes to start working again. And it's a similar concept with thiamine, in that if people who have these diseases where the enzymes which use thiamine are blocked, then the only way to restore function to those enzymes is to give mega doses and saturate the body. And sometimes that is indefinite. But again, so coming back to the principle, I hope I haven't spoken for too long on this, and then it makes sense. Basically, you have some people who it seems as though their condition is due to a genuine deficiency or insufficiency. And we'll go through the difference there. But ultimately, you have another group of people which they don't have a dietary deficiency. Many times they're doing all of the things right. They're already taking a multivitamin. They're doing all the stuff with the diet. They're doing all the stuff with detoxification, everything like that. You do everything with these people. No, there is a cellular, like a biochemical defect, let's say, that is only going to be responsive to super high doses for consistent periods of time. So apples and oranges, oftentimes they're confused. And I try to make a distinction between these two concepts, because what is going to work for someone who is just mildly insufficient is not necessarily going to work for someone with a very severe condition. And this applies the people under the severe category, probably run-of-the-mill people who do not have like diagnosable medical conditions, but do have, like I said, fibromyalgia. They do have ME/CFS. They do have even chronic inflammatory response syndrome to some extent. So these are going to be people that a lot of practitioners will be seeing. They're not going to respond to lower doses of B1 like the deficient population would. Different population.